things cannot stay like this. I wasn't made to be like this. This isn't my purpose in life. I'm doing things that embarrass me and embarrass other people. There's something really fundamental, askew, off track about all this. Something has to change. There has to be a deeper level of reality. There has to be some sense of identity and purpose. There has to be this place that the emotional tourist is looking for, that you're being invited to reach out and touch. There has to be something. I know I felt that, and I know you felt that too, if you're honest with yourself. There's a reason why you're here, and there's a place, a slot, something which is built especially for you, designed to make you into everything that you want, need, and ought to be. But right now, your attitude, your circumstance, your history, your future, everything seems to move against it. Things can't stay the same. Things have got to change.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number and try your call again.
All my messages come back to me. I can tell that they're unread. And you don't return my phone calls. Was it something we left unsaid? Oh, the heart's a lonely hunter that has somehow lost the tracks on this journey to the end of night, and there is no turning back. Things can't stay the same. Some things got to change. Some things got to change right now. Is this a wake or am I a nightmare? The boundaries are blurred. I hear lips and I see voices, but no one gets the word. And all our dreams are falling. Are they just echoes of the past? When we try to walk upon the water in this sea of broken hearts, things can't stay the same.
Greetings, fellow Earth babies, and welcome to Post-Punk Heartstrings. I'm Jimmy James S. Butler, coming to you over the digital airwaves. And I am here to bring you the second half of our conversation with Steve Scott. And we began this episode with a little bit of Steve talking to us, followed by a little piece of Something's Got to Change, which I believe came out on his Rice EP in 1987. I'm recording this from the closet of my new home, looking for the optimal sound to reach your ears, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the intro for this episode, because as you all know, moving is one of the most stressful experiences that people can go through, and so we are still trying to get settled in and unpack the many, many boxes and get things organized. So I am not going to spend a lot of time with the introduction. I do want to let you all know that I am actively working on getting some interviews set up that I'm very excited about. Also, I am hoping to work on some episodes that are just for me, and hopefully you will enjoy those, even though they are just for me. And hey, if you happen to listen to one of those episodes, they will immediately be converted to just for us episodes. At any rate, yes, some things are in the works and coming up, and I hope to be featuring some artists that you all will be excited about. And in addition, I am hoping to feature some artists who are relatively unknown to listeners. And so I really hope to provide a platform for those who want and need to get their music and art out there. And speaking of those artists, I would like to mention Josh Rude. Josh has a lot of music out there. It's very experimental, and I would definitely recommend heading over to Bandcamp and checking out all of the projects that he has there. I would definitely recommend seeking out his album called A Rock So Big I Can't. Is a very experimental work with a lot of voices and music and sounds and soundscapes. And I would highly recommend letting your fingers run across the keyboard and going over to Bandcamp to check that out. I know that he has some history with Steve Scott. And you know what? I may even throw one of Josh's tracks onto the end of this podcast as a bonus. But you have to listen all the way through first. Don't you dare rush ahead. Josh would not want that. So without any further rambling on my part, let's continue with our conversation with Steve Scott.
We now join the following program already in progress.
I know Jim wants to talk about shadow play. I think you were asking some questions about the lyrics last time we we talked, and Steve, I believe you said that you are not afraid of using mixed metaphors, like a drowning man grabbing at a straw, or at straws,
reaching for straws.
reaching for straws.
Reaching for straws. Yeah.
We figured that out last time.
I mean, and that's interesting as you bring up shadow play, because if we're just talking about what is the mystery and what you can accomplish through a very tight, small, spoken or sung unit, how you can trigger a world of associations with very minimal means. You go to a song like Shadow Play, and you've got a lot more lyrical content. There's more words in the line, there's more obvious rhymes, there's some sort of narrative behind what's going on. It sounds like a character is breaking up with his Asian girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. This person is seeing the world through their tears. You are not able to find the words to actually communicate reality or truth to them. Walking away, the mask of alibis and things. There's a lot of kind of compounding, not only mixed references, but compounding metaphors in that. You know, it's I mean, it's definitely like a cliche. I mean, the sort of you're breaking up with this exotic Asian alluring type person, and never again shall the twain meet, and worlds are not going to collide, and things like that. And there's a lot of pain and suffering, and a lot of hiding one's feelings behind a mask. And the chorus was, made reference to, wondering if the whole thing had been determined, if we're just puppets. And if we are puppets or shadows, then why are we in such pain? And why are there tears?
Your face, I see it filled with clouds. I'm turning from the rain. I wander lonely through the crowd of questions that no one claims. But what are these words worth? I struggle with metaphors. I'm just a drowning man reaching out for straws. And are we caught forever in the turning of this wheel? And if we're just reflections, then what is this we feel? And if we're only puppets, then why are these tears real in the shadow play? In the shadow play. The neon streets are captured in the wetness of your eyes. As I stumble like a drunkard across the burning bridge of life. And these rituals of indifference, these transparent alibis, will never heal the wounded souls we both try to disguise.
And these were specific references to certain kinds of scenes and conventions within Asian theatrical traditions, specifically the Balinese shadow play, where there's a particular piece of music that accompanies a particular section of the Balinese shadow play. And the gamelan orchestra plays a piece called The Puppets Are Weeping. So this notion of determinism, fatalism, and human pain within that were informing all my sort of, pretentious lyrics and things like that. While at the same time foreshadowing, unbeknownst to me, an actual situation I would be in 2 years down the road. Well, in 1989, when I went to Bali, and 2 or 3 years down the road, because we were tracking this song in 84, 85, 86, I think. And here I was after the arts conference in Bali. I was in Jakarta. I was in a very shady part of town. I was talking to Asian sex workers. I was showing them baby pictures. I was making a clandestine recording of their conversation with me. I was digitally sampling that conversation and creating loops much later on for a spoken word project called No Memory of You.
She's a very happy baby, she says. One of the girls offers me a cigarette. I tell her I don't smoke. Indo starts in. No smoke, no drink, no ladies. Later, it's time to go. And this time it really is goodbye. I'm flying back to USA next morning. We stand and talk for a few minutes more. You have memory of me, Inda says, pointing at my camera and tape recorder. I have no memory of you. Nancy asks me when I am coming back to Jakarta. I say, maybe next week. We all laugh.
So shadow play in some ways faintly foreshadowed that real world encounter that I had some years down the road. But the song stereotypically dealt with, communication, relationships, all the stuff that I go on about on Love in the Western World and Lost Horizon. All the songs on there, whether it's What of the Mystery, No More Parades, Ship of Fools, Minor Characters definitely was a sort of a relationship song. An emotional tourist, the idea of someone who is, am I real? Or am I just someone that through which the experiences of the world flow through? Am I just a filter for kids in a bar in Berlin, for hungry children at my taxi cab window? Am I so numb that I'm simply allowing my shape to be defined by what the world throws at me as I travel? It's like trying to run away from your shadow.
I think there's a line about, thank God I can change the channel.
Yes, that's an emotional.
Yeah, it's sort of, in the Western world, you can kind of separate yourself from things that are happening, We're pretty insulated, That's how I...
Exactly right. I wrote those lyrics. Funny thing, well, funny to me, I wrote those lyrics while I was stuck in England in 83, because one of the things that I did while I was in England, something else I went and did was when the film with David Bowie, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, about a prisoner in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, I saw that film, and that influenced the third verse. Television with its code of honor spills Technicolor guts on the living room floor. Beam me up out of this global village, man. Thank God I can change the channels. It's kind of like, we're so numb, we're so cut off, we're going to look for any means of escape. And here's what we're up against. That song came out And I would get letters from people that said, you do know that television news crews do not use Technicolor film.
That's what that's what they got out of it.
That was
the
it.
takeaway.
There's a different film stock that they use for television news in the 80s. It was not Technicolor. I'm going, thank you so much. I'll
Must have been
change the
Americans.
lyrics immediately.
Thank you for totally missing the point.
Don't say the words goodbye, love. You'll break my heart in two. Rain clouds would fill the skies, love, and all because of you. Put me down as a lonesome traveler. Write me off as a minor character. I move, I leave no traces. I'm just a wave in a sea of faces. I'm just an emotional tourist. Call this a holiday romance. So sad we couldn't make the connection. Call us victims of circumstance. Too bad we couldn't get it together. Put it down to a change in the weather. Someone said that there's nothing to fear except fear itself. Hey, I wish you were here. I'm drinking beer in a bar in Berlin. Waves of rage on the stereo system. I see children and they're snapping their fingers. In a vision I could see them marching. I'll get a letter from another war zone. Is there tenderness behind those enemy lines? My heart feels as big as the ocean. My God, these are dangerous times. I'm just an emotional tourist. Call this a holiday romance. And so sad we couldn't make the connection. Call us victims of circumstance. Too bad we couldn't get it together. Put it down to a change in the weather. Someone said that there's nothing to fear except fear itself. Hey, I wish you were here. Hungry children in my taxi cab window, hands raised in a silent plea. And there's no light in the tunnel of their eyes. Thank God for a change in the signal. Television with its code of honor spills Technicolor guts on the living room floor. Hey, beat me up out of this global village, man. Thank God I can change the channels. I'm just an emotional tourist. Call this a holiday romance. So sad we couldn't make the connection. Call us victims of circumstance. Too bad we couldn't get it together. Put it down to a change.
We talked a lot, and you talked a lot about the communication on this album. You know, there's a lot about relationships and communication, and the song Touch sort of is a ultimate cry to find some way to get past the words and when they're not enough and affect, yeah, I don't know if it was in terms of a relationship or it maybe a general feeling of interacting to humans or other people, you know, in the world.
Everything has specific inspirations, and if I start breaking down the personal histories that feed into these songs, there'll be some very angry, sad people.
Yeah. And we don't want to do that either. Jim and I have talked about that a lot.
So let's keep it light and general.
Yeah. And Jim and I have talked about that a lot. We don't want to pick apart, you know, every band has that, you know, I don't know that they really want you to dig into that stuff, you know.
So Touch was quite specific, but I felt it had a general application. I mean, it's like Shakespeare. He's writing about stuff that's specific to the society and history of his times, but his plays have universal resonance. So yes, I'm just like Shakespeare.
Exactly. I talk a lot about the ear of the beholder, you know, and so for that song, for me, it makes me feel like, you know, that whole idea of communication breaks down verbally to such a level that you're desperately trying to find any way to touch someone or you be there for them or something like that. So
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. There are times when talking just gets in the way, that you're basically digging yourself in deeper when it comes to being isolated or not really communicating what's actually on your heart or in your mind. A lot of what that song was about, for me, could be heard in the drums.
oh yeah. Yeah.
The drums and also that guitar riff that Mike Rowe is playing, that sounds almost like a Jujuka pipe riff. We're just coming up with those things, and again, yet another instance of how I was working with people who picked up on the spirit and intent behind the lyrical content and was able to translate it through what they played, that carried the sort of the heart of the song that much further. So you got Burundi style drumming, you've got a dervish sounding guitar, and you got these weird keyboard chords and me singing. It's heaven on earth.
And absolutely. And there's a lot of change throughout all the songs, including that one, of rhythm, right? There's different parts that kind of change tempo, and that's really makes it interesting for the listener. You know, you don't know what's going to come next, right?
I'll be glad to hear that, because keeping it interesting for the listener was on my to-do list.
It's good.
You didn't set out to just bore the listener?
No, I know artists that have done
Plenty
that.
of that.
So I've done sort of minimalist drone pieces or short 24-hour films of the Empire State Building. I figured that was done, and I needed to come up with something else.
Great. I would like to hear you talk about Call of the Wild a little bit, just the musically, because I think it's really interesting. It reminds me of like a adamant type of drum rhythm or something at the beginning.
It's possible. I don't know. Call of the Wild, I mean, I had the title. I stole the title from a book.
Yeah.
And I wrote some lyrics again about, an individual feeling trapped behind their inability to break through or break out and make contact with someone else. Musically, I felt that Call of the Wild was somewhere between accessible and almost generic in terms of what it did melodically and with the guitar chords and things like that, and the chorus. So I don't have too much. I mean, I had like 1.5 verses. I mean, I think then we ended up repeating some stuff. I knew what the song did, and it was meant to be like the song "Something's Gonna Change." These songs were meant to be accessible, but powerful entrees to the vision that was carried in some of the other songs, whether it be Minor Characters or Ship of Fools or Shadow Play or Touch and things like that.
Forget the chain reaction. Forget the leap of faith. There goes the main attraction. You let her walk away. One more parade gets rained on. No clouds for silver linings. Another lost direction. It doesn't bear reflection. Forget the universal dream. Don't think that we're all one. Once more your heart's been shattered. Once more you're all alone. Pretend it doesn't matter. Pretend that you don't
Can you comment on Ship of Fools? Do you have any comments about that song? I really
That's
like that one.
very much along with the as yet unheard Rafters Not the Shore, and the song No More Parades. It was very much about, people's quest for truth or quest for reality and trying out different things and not getting very far, going around in circles, but getting closer to the edge. But Sail Away or the Ship of Fools. I'm familiar with the reference to the Ship of Fools in literary history and culture. It seemed to be a good image. The verses pretty much wrote themselves, and I wanted to have a good thumpy, strummy, heave ho, let's go, guys, sail away on the Ship of Fools.
Some have called us heroes, others say we've lost our mind. Some have called us visionaries, others say that we've gone blind. But we're done with their traditions, we don't want to get trapped. So we've thrown away the anchor, and we've thrown away the maps. At the center of this search, we're moving round in circles, we're getting closer to the edge. Sail away on the Ship of Fools. Sail away on the Ship of Fools.
With the wonderful voicings of Darla Greiser.
Perfect. I was getting ready to bring her up. I was trying to remember her name.
Darla Greiser, she sang on that one. She probably sang on a whole bunch, but I know
lot of them.
she was on Sound of Waves, and I know she was on
When Worlds Collide, was she on that one? I think she was. Yeah, beautiful. And her background vocals and upfront vocals with you really help make the album as well.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, she's someone else who's able to understands the intent and spirit of the song and is able to translate it through her medium into, through her voice.
Was she not also on Love in the Western World?
I cannot remember.
Not? Okay. I thought I saw her credited, but I can't remember for sure.
It would not surprise me if she's on there. There's a bunch of singing on Love in the Western World, but I mean, I prepped myself. Oh yeah, Darla. We got to talk about Darla on Lost Horizon because of the contribution that her voice and her harmonies made to some of those songs. Definitely the Sound of Waves, for example.
Yeah.
Is she in the beginning of that song, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I thought I felt the start of a new beginning when I saw your footprints in the sand. I heard you speak my name when you were talking. It's just as if you had the whole thing planned. But right now, the only thing I hear is the sound of waves crashing all around.
yet another song that was, the title was taken from a Japanese novel, and yet the song was very much about a meeting, say, between a would-be follower and Jesus on the beach, as it were. So it had that sort of vaguely Asiatic, mysterious, romantic vibe to it, while having spiritual content. And Darla's amazing harmonies, Darla's amazing voice.
Awesome. So, Magnificent Obsession,
Yes.
I think is kind of listed as it's sort of a partnering with Lost Horizons, sort of, but it's like kind of B-sides.
Basically, Magnificent Obsession was another alternative records release, and it was a combination of live versions of some of the songs of Love in the Western World and I think Lost Horizon Project, like Heaven Hears the Heart That Breaks and Memory Babe, that were left off the Lost Horizon Project. So we gathered together all the fragments, both live and studio tracks that were not used, and we put them on Magnificent Obsession. Among the live tracks, since we brought the project up, among the live tracks, the song Farthest Star and The Love You Need were both recorded for my Moving Pictures album with Larry Norman.
Ah, okay.
In fact, Farthest Star was one of the very first songs I ever wrote. What's on Magnificent Obsession is me playing the song live during a concert at Warehouse Christian Ministries.
Nice. I believe No Time Like Now is on that collection live, I think.
Okay.
And I think you mentioned last time we talked where that bass line came from.
Oh, well, this one of the things I like to do, and we've talked about, how an artist like a band like the Smiths are going to like layer tongue-in-cheek stuff with really heartfelt, melancholy stuff, and just create this mix of music that's got a sad element to it and a happy element to it. We've talked about how I used the harmonica and the sort of that nostalgic reference to early 60s type music that featured the harmonica, old Beatles records and things like that. When you get to something like the song No Time Like Now, when I first came to this country, one of the things that I was curious about, I'd read this music paper spread. They did this big feature article on all these bands out of New York. And that would be, Television, The Cars, and all the bands that would be associated with the sort of the New York end of new wave and punk rock. So I read this in the mid-1970s, and there was a reference to a band or a duo who had been an opening act for The Cars and who had been apparently so extreme in what they did, the audience basically booed them off. And so I found myself thinking, when I 1975, 1976, coming out of art school, going to America, and I think, okay, if this is the punk rock revolution and these guys, even in this punk rock parenthesis, these guys are getting thrown off stage, then I want to find out what these guys are doing. And there was these two guys in New York. The keyboardist was Martin Rev, and the singer was Alan Vega. And together they formed a band called Suicide. And basically it was like low-end, lo-fi, low-rent keyboard with, drum preset and a bunch of real cheesy low-end synth voices played by Martin Rev. And Alan Vega, who was somewhere between, very extreme performance, very impassioned singing, yelling, talking, trying to engage the audience in some way. And one of the songs that Suicide did on their first album called Ghost Rider, which has a riff, like a 3-note riff in this cheesy, lo-fi, low-rent synth pad with these manic drum patches going away underneath it.
Who's riding a motorcycle hero? Baby, he's a looking so cute. Sneaking round in a blue jumpsuit. Who's riding a motorcycle hero? Baby, he's a blazing away.
I heard that and I thought, I want to do something like that for the song No Time Like Now. But I'm not going to marry it to this kind of frenzied drum machine type feel. I'm going to get a completely different drum sound underneath it. And something else I saw when I first came to this country was the comedic stylings of Andy Kaufman, which I was very impressed by, especially when he played the congas. And I thought, okay, I'm going to marry a Suicide keyboard riff to an Andy Kaufman conga sequence and see what we come up with.
It's awesome.
And I'm going to write a bunch of lyrics that could be construed as something about suicide.
Wow.
Yesterday is leaning on you, tomorrow demands protection. You're just another blank page in a history book, but you're too scared to take a look. She was the one with problems of her own, always demanding perfection. Wherever you were going when the lights went out, it had to be the wrong direction. And there's no time like now. No time like now. No time like now to step over the line. No time like now. No time like now. No time like now to step over. Just another sad song on the radio. So this is modern romance. Don't ever tell me that you told me so. I had nowhere else to go. He was the one with problems of his own, just another bad connection. Wherever he was going when the lights went out, it had to be the wrong direction. And there's no time like now. No time like now. No time like now to step over the line. No time like now. No time like now. No time like now to step over.
And then, so talk about Mike Rowe's guitar work at the end of that song.
Well, to the
It kind of goes off the rails, right? But it's so
well,
cool.
It does. We were just, it's all fresh in my mind because we were just digitizing all this stuff. I think he's taken over by an understanding of the heart and the intent of the song, and it comes exploding out of his fingers that happen to be on a guitar fretboard. And he plays great guitar and carries the emotional content of the song out of the lyrics into what the guitar does over the drums and the keyboard riff.
I think Jim put together all of your videos on a YouTube playlist. Which video is it? I can't remember which song it is, but Jim will know. When Mike Rowe is like mock destroying his guitar at the end of.
Oh,
He's swinging the guitar almost like in
I think it
in
was
the
Tower
punk.
of Babel, wasn't it?
I
Was it
think
Tower
maybe
of
that
Babel?
was it.
Was it Tower of Babel? Great.
It was a
Okay.
live. It was a live concert.
All right then. Well, I have to warn you, I have avoided religiously watching videos of myself performing.
Why is that?
I don't feel very rock star-ish.
Hmm.
And
You,
watching
s-
myself attempt, not knowing that
you
it's not hugely comfortable to be up there. And
I don't. I feel like I agree with you that you are not rock starish in the videos, but I would say that you're very you, and you're sort of you almost are like a beatnik poet. That kind of
go with that.
mannerism, which I
Sure.
think is cool. I think it really makes it.
I think I think if I had to do it all again, I'd probably get up the gumption and just go, okay, I'm not going to be Mick Jagger or Freddie Mercury, but I do have this person. I mean, you look at someone like David Byrne with Talking Heads, you
Yeah,
go, "Oh, he's got that whole stiff mannerism down to a T. You could do that. It just where you know that you don't look very comfortable trying to be a pop star or something. Um, why not just play with that? Play with being
yeah,
awkward. Play with being
absolutely.
slightly offbeat. Play with those things. Create a character. Be a persona. Have that persona, come out through the songs because the songs are definitely about that kind of alienation. Why not translate it into a performance tech? Look at the way Ian Curtis would carry on in the front of Joy Division. It's open now. You can explore those kinds of theatrics, as it were. At the time, I was going, "Oh, I'm not a rock star. I can't do this. I think I'll do spoken word instead." So,
It kind of brings us up to that's a good segue, sort of, because you then kind of you ended up releasing the Butterfly Effect on Blonde Vinyl, and that was Mike Knott's label.
yep,
Um, I've been working on a Mike Knott tribute episode for months
good.
because I had a stroke and I just he got sidetracked
Wow.
because he passed away earlier this year.
Yep.
Can you talk about Mike a little bit or your interaction with him in the label?
Minimal interaction. Always wanted to get to know him better. Did go to some of his live performances. Saw him at Cornerstone. Saw him in Los Angeles. I suspect that there was a wealth of intelligence present behind what he did. A lot of what he did was like very rock and roll, very performative, and things like that. You look at his paintings and you look at the way what he staged. I mean, if you go to this, there's out there in YouTube land, he's at Cornerstone. He's appearing on stage and he's got the Cookie Monster head on while he's singing about a bomb, and somebody else in the band is made up like a clown. And so you just feel in your heart that Mike Knott basically understood what he was doing, and he was bringing in all kinds of performance and theatrical references and artistic sensibilities, and that the loud music and the somewhat moody persona were just the tip of a very intelligent iceberg. And I always thought, man, if we can get past the sort of the professional and the business and
Hmm.
we can just get past that and just talk turkey, because I've got an art school background. You've definitely got an awareness of what's going on artistically, with a capital A. I'd love to get into those trenches with you and discuss that stuff with you. Leaving aside all the loud rock music and the all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
that was not to be. But I connected with Mike Knott and Blonde Vinyl via a guy called Chris Rumbaugh, who was at that time doing something at Biola University, and he may have been I think he was a student there, but he was also a DJ. And he was connected to or adjacent to a band called Breakfast with Amy,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
who were another group of highly intelligent people that were pulling together many layers of artistic reference, both in satirical ways and also, ways that what they were pulling together were important elements of the structural component of what they were doing. So it wasn't all pie in the face type stuff. It had some substance that contributed to the overall structure. I met Chris because I went to Biola, and I went to Biola because I'd written to some faculty at the art department and said, "Hey, I'm a pop star, and I also know all about art. When can I come meet your students?" And something worked out. It's like about the early 90s. Something worked out. And when I was down there, I ended up talking with Chris Rumbaugh. And it was through Chris Rumbaugh and Kenneth Bauer and others, Miles Williams, other people as well, that were all satellites within that Blonde Vinyl universe, that I ended up getting my relationship with Blonde Vinyl and doing the butterfly effect through them. But the butterfly effect, let us not forget that the first poem on the butterfly effect is the Sun poem. And the Sun poem was printed on the back of the Come Back Soon album that was put out by Songray, which was the pre-exit version of the record label at Warehouse Christian Ministries. So from Larry Norman to Songray to Exit to Alternative Records to Blonde Vinyl, there is something of a Steve Scott thread carries on all these things. As I say, 95% of it is other people's investment, emotional, spiritual, and things like that. But when I sit back and I look at these things, I just go, oh my God, I was there for that. I was there for that. I went and saw that. I don't know why I had to go do this, but as a result of doing this, I got to go do this. I met these people. As a result of meeting these people, I got to do this. And so it's gone from, meeting Randy Stonehill in Carshalton outside of London to meeting Mike Knott in his LA offices and beyond.
Every interview I've heard, which aren't that many, but there are a few, and the reading I've done, and our last discussion, you talk about the Book of John a lot, and as a case study of art in culture.
Sure.
And that's also tied into the book, The Way of the Sevenfold Secret, and the album that you made that's about that, and about the author of the book, Lilias Trotter.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we take some time to talk about anything you want to talk about related to the process of that and the book, and who she was and how the album came about. Let's talk about that project, the book and the project. And Jim may have some questions as well.
All right. Well, all I'll say about John is John's gospel is that I felt it provided an accessible intro into the mindset and the inspiration of John the storyteller, and that the information you could get by reading between the lines of John's gospel, you could learn some things about communication. I mean, John was working with one cultural context that was very steeped in Israelite tradition and narrative. He also had a foot in a culture that was influenced in some ways by the surrounding Greek and Roman culture. So there are different scholars some will emphasize John's reliance on the Old Testament and related traditions. Others will talk about John's use of Greek theater forms. John, these stories are like little vignettes, little like Greek plays. And I thought, okay, well, that makes John the poster boy of what it looks like to try and communicate in a culturally relevant way. And we all read John. Not everybody reads the Princeton Lectures by Abraham Kuyper and his teachings on culture. Not everybody reads Hans Ruckmacher, Modern Art and Death in the Culture. Not everybody reads Jeremy Begbie's books, Voicing Creation's Praise, Abundantly More. There's very much a sort of an academic conversation that's very necessary, and is introducing incremental change into how the church understands the reflective and expressive potential of the arts. Many people get scared away from the conversation by all the big words, the academic concepts, and things like that. And I thought, well, we all read John. Your pastor preaches from John. We read the stories of John. We can look at what John did. We can look at how John did it, and we might get a conversation about culturally relevant communication going that's not in academic language necessarily as important as that conversation is, but it's something that a lot more of us can grasp. And we can see John's gospel as both, going deeper into Jesus, learning more about John's communication methods, and applying our going deeper and applying what we've learned to how we approach our mission to the culture around us or to the culture we end up being sent to. So that was it. John, for me, provided a very accessible vocabulary, not only to change you as a person and make you a better Christian, but also to give you a lot of information about what incarnational communication can look like. And it's accessible. We all read the Gospel of John. So there's that. Lilias Trotter was a Victorian missionary that I learned about from Miriam Huffman Rockness' excellent biography, rush out and buy it. Was somebody who was an artist who grew up middle-class household, made art, was some of her drawings and watercolors came to the attention of a well-known art critic at the time, John Ruskin, who took her under his wing and said, I will teach you how to be an artist and I will make you into a very famous artist in Victorian London. Lilias had a spiritual dimension to her life, which compelled her to be in service and in mission to the more unfortunate elements of London society. And it was during a meeting at the Young Women's Christian Association that Lilias heard a missionary from Africa make an appeal for people to go into mission in North Africa. And Lilias felt that she was going to have to do that. This involved telling Mr. Ruskin that she was not going to be pursuing a career in the arts. She was going to Algeria to be in mission and service among the Muslim community. So she did. She couldn't even get accepted to a missionary agency at the time because of some health concerns, that pre-existing health condition. So she and two friends basically had a big garage sale and took all the proceeds and went to Algeria with no contacts, no language, no nothing. One of their earliest ways of learning the Arabic language was to, write out Bible verses and accost strangers and say, what does this say? What does this mean?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So Lilias Trotter poured out her life forming what was called the Algiers Mission Band, which was involved in rescuing, communicating with, and rescuing those people that were marginalized by or victimized by some of the traditions that were associated with the Muslim practice or Islamic practice at the time. And she was attempting to disciple them. Providentially, and this goes back to our big picture thinking we were talking about earlier, the health condition that Lilias had made her somewhat fragile and required times away from the mission field for recuperation. It was during those times that she would write books on the spiritual life. Towards the end, parables of the cross, parables of the Christ life. And she would use her artistic skill and her evident gifts to illustrate prayer letters, to illustrate books that she was putting out, so that her artistic skill set, while no longer about making her a famous artist, they were definitely in the flow of what she was doing in service and mission. Towards the end of her life, Lilias had connected with and befriended members of the Sufi community within the Islamic tradition. And towards the very end of her life, in 1924 through 6, I think, she was bedridden. And she wrote a book called The Way of the Sevenfold Secret that took all of the I am statements that Jesus spoke in the Gospel of John, and she unpacked each of those statements in a way that was intended for the Sufi ear and heart to take hold of and appreciate and come to a newer and deeper understanding of who Jesus was and why he was relevant to them in their situation. So she wrote her book. It came out. I learned of this book some years ago. I ended up, I eventually found it online, a free copy online, and I read it and I thought, I'm going to write some poems inspired by this book. Initially, I wrote blank verse because I wanted to, pretty much in the same spirit, I wanted to do something and then find a local singer or translator who would help me by translating the poems from my blank verse into something more traditional, rhyming, singable, something that was pressed into the song and the poetry forms of this particular community, because I saw it as a mission thing. But the more I worked on the poems, and I was reading the poets that I imagined were on the horizon around Lilias's time. So I'd be reading everything from Victorian hymn books through to Edwardian poets, through to First World War poets, Wilfred Owen, Lewis MacNeice, people like that. And I found that the poetry that I was writing, inspired as it was by Lilias's book and the I am statements, the poetry I was writing was steered more and more towards a simpler, more traditional rhyming form. So now I can go into a conversation with whoever. I've had a couple of conversations already. Say, I got this. I want to translate it. I want to hear it sung. I want this to happen in Pakistan. I want to hear what it sounds like in Farsi, Urdu, Telugu. I want to know how these poems, what kind of shape they take in a local song form, where there is a tradition of, whether it be in the Muslim context or the Bhakti context in North India. I want to find out what this stuff does. I also want to find out what the content does in our conversation about Jesus, or our conversation with those about Jesus. So that was the way of the Sevenfold Secret. That was what inspired me, and what ended up driving me to write the kind of thing that I ended up writing, the rhyming poems, the simple structures and things like that. And I was surprised at the beginning of the year, the church that I go to also rents space or allows the Indian Church of Sacramento to meet on their premises at a different time of day. I was looking at one of the videos of their services, and I saw that there was a dancer that was part of the worship service. And the dance style is Bharatanatyam. And I thought, okay, traditional Indian dance. I wonder how they would interpret one of these poems. And I ended up seeing a performance of one of the Sevenfold Secret poems as interpreted in mime and dance through this traditional Bharatanatyam Indian dance language. And I was as delighted and surprised by the information that came back to me, as I hope everyone else was.
Wow, that's cool.
The vine. You would speak in figures, shadows, signs, adapted to the slowness of our minds, or drawing from deep wells of shared tradition, one time aligning words to cast the vision, of a garden and a vine that flourishing feeds life to those rooted or grafted in. I once reclined, oblivious to such themes, until you shook me from my barren dreams, bathed me in light, entreating me to find your broken frame. You compelled me bind myself to it, and to do no more than cling, until your open wounds bled into mine.
Wow,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
really cool. We're going to end the episode with the bonus track from your album,
Great. Excellent.
Leaving the Echo Chamber, which is so cool. I'll play that at the end, just so you
Sure.
know. I would encourage everyone to go check out on Bandcamp, the album. I bought the CD. I think there's only like a limited, maybe 200. I think there's like maybe 12 left when I bought one. So
You can always reach out to me.
yeah.
I've got more than
So
12, but not much more than 12
yeah,
myself.
but it's definitely worth seeking out. Like I said, I've been listening to it the past couple days because I just bought it. You could like listen to the whole thing, like one track. You can also listen to the breakups of the tracks.
Sure.
And they're called things like The Companion, The Bread, The Vine. They're really interesting.
All derived from the I am sayings of Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think the opener is called Rainbows at Night.
Yeah, it's the
Right.
first 2 poems. Rainbows at Midnight was
Yeah.
a poem about me walking my daughters to elementary school one winter and us discussing rainbows at midnight. Then the second poem, 65 Roses,
Yeah. Yeah.
was inspired by the story of an artist called Dylan Mortimer, who is a visual artist who is on his second lung transplant
Oh,
because
wow.
he is a cystic fibrosis warrior. And he's
Wow.
a young man. He's 45 now, I think. He's got a family. But the illness of cystic fibrosis, which we should all learn more about,
Hmm.
I think would, back when he was born, he'd be looking at the end of the tunnel, late teens, early 20s. Maybe I'm speaking in complete ignorance, but there's no good outcome. But there are tremendous medical breakthroughs. There's lung transplants. There's new medication coming onto the marketplace. And there are survivors and warriors like the artist Dylan Mortimer, who you will find online. He's got his own website. He's an astonishing, accomplished visual artist with the right kind of heft of the academic art damage kind of credentials behind him. And he's also a champion and a warrior and a spokesperson for the better outcomes for cystic fibrosis situation. And in his lifetime, he's seen changes medically as to what's possible, whether it be, his own experience with lung transplant, new medications, all those kinds of things. But it's something we should go look at Dylan Mortimer's work and learn everything you can about cystic fibrosis and consider where you can speak into that situation, contribution-wise. Whether you're buying Dylan's art or just making a contribution to buy a breathing vest for some child in a developing economy, look into it and pray about plugging in to that situation because it's a dynamic situation, but your involvement will make it even more dynamic. So
Yeah.
Rainbows at Midnight and 65 Roses were the first 2 poems, and then it kicks in to The Way of the Sevenfold Secret, the light, the bread, the whatever.
Nice. Jim, I want to make sure if you have questions regarding the way of the sevenfold secret, if you want to ask those, that'd be great.
I'll just ask real quick. Who did the ambient soundscapes in the background for that
Me.
album? You did.
That was me.
Oh, okay.
That was me. And I
Me,
searched for
yeah.
the longest
That's
time.
awesome.
I thought, oh, I just need Middle Eastern music behind this stuff. I
Right.
just need to somehow. I remember wandering through a street market in Amsterdam in 2022 with my phone out, just trying to get, because there were like these stalls of Middle Eastern stuff being sold, and they were playing like, Turkish disco music, and I thought, yeah,
That's
slow
cool.
it down or something.
So cool.
But I eventually ended up writing all the music myself, playing it, sketching it out in GarageBand, and supremely in a program called GeoShred. I use GeoShred Pro on my iPad. And GeoShred Pro, it's ostensibly a program. I don't want to undersell it. It was written for guitarists, I think, to like hundreds of guitar voicings, but you play it on an iPad. But along with the guitar voicings, be it acoustic, be it dobro, be it electric, be it shred, be it this, be it that, there's a whole bunch of other voices on there, other sound libraries on there that draw upon instruments from other parts of the world, notably the Indian subcontinent. And so it was from the flute voices in GeoShred Pro that I was able to pull up a really heartfelt, authentic sounding, almost Bansuri type flute, which I used on a couple of tracks in there. And there were other things in there as well that made their way into the mix. But if you have an iPad or an iPad Pro, you really should look into getting the GeoShred Pro program. It's a bona fide instrument, tons of voices, and very fluid, very flexible. It's a lot of stuff you can do with it. And it really augments, enhances, and colors what you do with the other programs, your Cubases, your GarageBands, and what have you, and things like that. But I sketched it all in GarageBand, but this was on the iPad. By the time I took it into a studio that my friend was running, he had GarageBand for like Mac. So there were more voices I could pull in. I had what's called the MIDI information. I had the track information. We just enriched and enhanced some of the voices. If you listen carefully through the entire sequence of The Way of the Sevenfold Secret, there are repeated melodic and textural themes, and they all come together on the track The Life at the end. The flute comes back in, the heavily tremoloed guitars, the strings, all that stuff mashes up at the end there. So yeah, I created the backgrounds, but again, just like I'm dependent on 85 to 90% of other people's generosity, I was massively dependent on the astonishing GeoShred Pro on my iPad. What a great program. Everyone buy it.
Cool.
That's good. This episode is brought to you by GeoShred. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So we're winding down. I've got a couple other things I definitely want to mention, and I want to hear some poems. Before that, I want to make sure we mention the band Eisley.
Oh yeah. Oh,
and you
yeah,
can talk about it. You can talk about it, please.
I just I stumbled across Eisley like a million years ago during an MTV late night buzzbox type thing where they're showing videos by either unknown or emerging bands. And I saw the Eisley video for Marvelous Things that looked like it was shot at a birthday party in someone's backyard. And I'm going, this is really, and they all looked like really young. And the song was very sort of kind of had ethereal and quite, melodically interesting. And I thought, man, this combo, this lo-fi birthday party footage coupled with this song and these young people, that's really good. So then I took a dive in and looked at things like Telescope Eyes and other tracks by Eisley. And I began to like follow them big time from their first album on all the way up to whatever situation they're in now, which I suspect is sort of hiatus or something. But I was really, really impressed by the band Eisley out of Texas.
I woke the dawn, saw horses growing out the lawn. I glimpsed a bat with butterfly wings. Oh, what marvelous things! Dark night, cold time, and sleep tight, my baby. Morning light shall burst bright and keep us here safely. I followed a rabbit through
Melodic
rows of
intelligence,
rainbows.
heartfelt lyrical content, and beautiful band, beautiful people, sincere, great music. Someone else, yet again, that somehow slightly slips through the cracks when you're thinking about music. But they've got a ton of stuff out there. And I always thought that they were wonderful, melodic, inventive, spiritually challenging, beautiful harmonies in the singing, and astonishing lyrical content and melodic content. And I was really, really, really impressed by Eisley.
We will definitely check them out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll put
Yes,
links. I'm
everyone
going to
should
put
check
links
out.
into the show notes. And yeah, so I
That's
want to
very
make sure we don't forget The Memory of Water.
Yes, that's a project I'm working on now. I've recorded 4 songs, ostensibly using my good friend Jebby Motes, who's a singer-songwriter and a rock star in his own accord, performer, using him as lead vocalist on some of the tracks, him as guitarist on some of the tracks. My own daughter Rebecca supplies some lead vocals, some background vocals, and some harmonies. The 4 songs will either be a 4-song EP on Bandcamp, or if I record a couple more songs, a 6-song EP on Bandcamp, bolstered hopefully by whatever we end up doing with digitized versions of Lost Horizon, Love in the Western World, and things like that. If there's some way of getting this stuff back up there in a way that opens the door for a project like Memory of Water, so much the better. My ultimate goal with the Memory of Water, of course, is to find a way of recording enough tracks for a full-length album. I don't anticipate singing on it, but stranger things have happened.
We press the muted heavens, implore you for a sign. When will these walls be broken? When will these hearts align?
Weird seeds and images cross the burning distances. The memory of water, the thread that binds. Multiple reflections unfold.
working with guest vocalists. I was talking to someone and they said, "Oh yeah, this guest vocalist thing is really an intriguing angle." So I may continue to work like that. I might voice something myself. We'll see. But the ultimate goal is to get a full-length album of Steve Scott songs up
Nice.
there in digital land for 2024, 2025.
Oh, that's awesome. That's exciting. I forgot to mention something, and hopefully we can do this fairly briefly because I hate to not mention this, and it was part of the timeline that I skip over accidentally in my notes. It was the Crossing the Boundaries, touring with Galen Stewart, that project. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, just a tiny bit. That was one of the projects that came out of, because in the 90s I was getting to go talk at Cornerstone Festival, doing something at other arts events here and there, and giving like art damage type lectures and poetry, spoken word performances. Galen Stewart was a painter from Ohio at the time that we would cross paths regularly at the Cornerstone Festival. We began to talk about working on a collaboration together where I would write poems and create sound loops, and we would install the poems and sound loops in a gallery setting in like CD players, multiple players all going at the same time with his paintings. And the general theme was natural systems and cultural systems that are fragile, being threatened, in a state of decay, whatever. So I wrote poetry about flowers and birds and stuff like that. He integrated the language and the imagery that one would associate with things like that into his paintings and collages. And together, we created a mixed media gallery experience involving bird song, sound loops, spoken word, his images and paintings. And that went to different parts of this country. It went via as a PowerPoint presentation to other parts of the world where I'd be giving a talk about the project. So everywhere from Eastern Europe to the People's Republic of China got touched by this project. I wrote a magazine article about it for Radix magazine, the magazine out of Berkeley. So the project kind of unfolded in many different expressions.
Awesome.
But that was what we did, and that was the theme.
Thank you so much for talking about it.
And
I'm sorry that
the CD came out, of course, as well, which means you could listen to the thing in sequence and look at reproductions of Galen's paintings.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I apologize for not mentioning. I skipped over it accidentally, but I thought we needed to mention it. Do you have a time for a couple poems or whatever you have
Sure,
that you want to?
I can read a couple of poems.
That would be great.
This is called For This Moment, or The Memorial. Bundled in coats, they huddled on the corner beneath the street lamp haze, their upturned faces pale. It was as if they searched for shelter in each other's empty gaze. Those who found their voices unpacked stray thoughts and feelings, or they quietly mumbled curses as torchlight flickered, failed. Some things grew hard to see. By now, a few were kneeling, arranging ragged flowers, cardboard signs. The colors smeared and ran. A balloon broke free, floating among stained fingers and numbed minds. A gray man of the cloth clung to the group. Spittle flecked his lips as he explained. Nobody cared. No one was listening. Yet he remained hanging like smoke in looped and loosening strands, unfolding from some talker's moving hand. All around them, the insistent rain, fierce and slanted, goaded by the wind, was pummeling the glowing, broken shapes, trapped beneath bright surfaces below. And beyond, the traffic, thickly draped in its own angry hum, the constant flow drowning the silence. There was no escape.
Wow, that's great.
And then this is from Bali. I've got this and one more. This is from Bali. This is after a rainstorm in Bali. And it makes reference to what the frogs do once it stopped raining in Bali.
Gotcha.
A single drop buds clear upon the downturned leaf, then falls and breaks the surface of still water. It flowers, frail as silk, expanding to embrace the silvered disk that slides and slowly shifts among reflected, broken clouds. And far away across the empty beach, the dense packed sand, there is the drum and rumble of the waves. White hems of lace will fray and gently drift. Meanwhile, in this garden of incandescent green, faces of radiant stone lift from the pond. At last the frogs begin to braid the air unseen with interwoven tones, now that the rain has gone.
Nice.
And finally, and this will set up whatever it is, because the track that you want to play, the
Leaving the
Echo
echo chamber.
that's based on the story in John 8 of the adulterous woman. I've got a poem here, which will be the last poem I read.
Hopefully
which
not
is
ever.
About no, not ever. No, with about the wedding at Cana in John chapter 2. The wedding was in trouble. They were out of wine. We stood around and watched proceedings grinding to a halt. No one was assigning fault, you understand. It's just that things had gotten a little out of hand. At length, someone in charge turned to her son. He was invited, but all those hangers-on pretty much drunk the place dry. How is that our problem? That was his reply. She comes to us and says, make sure you do whatever it is he asks. I tell my crew, I'm figuring we might be off the hook. But then I notice that he starts to look at 6 stone jars the family kept by for water that was used to purify according to the law. He wants them filled. Now they were large, and what's more, quite empty when we first took from the well. He then points to the steward and says, go give him some. He takes just one taste and then turns to the groom. About this time, the cheaper stuff gets poured. Not so with you. You've saved the best until the party's almost through. Where did it come from? No one's got a clue. So we at least had that. The servants knew.
Cool.
So there we are.
There we are. Nice.
Very visual
You're right.
of the story.
What'd you say, Jim?
So it's very visual for the story of water to wine.
Yeah.
It's really it's a nice way to hear the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, running very short on time. Thank you so much for joining us twice and being gracious enough to come back and talk to us again when we had, lost our recording, so, but we had a wonderful time. I can speak for both Jim and I talking to you on both occasions, and we really appreciate you.
I enjoyed hearing the sound of my own voice as well.
And I have been regularly checking to show that the recording is in progress. So when I leave, it will convert because it automatically converts. And I will contact you both to verify that immediately afterwards. Really looking forward to everything you've got coming up, whether it's your new project that you're working on or the remastering of the other projects. And it's been fantastic. I have loved our conversation. So thank you so much.
It's been a very enjoyable experience for me. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for even wanting to talk to me, because it's just great to explore and to explain and to learn things from the conversation.
We will keep in touch.
Definitely.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will talk to you soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Burn, leaving the echo chamber. We are leaving the echo chamber. We're going to watch it burn. In the light of its fire, maybe some of us will learn. Mercy is my heart's desire for those with nowhere left to turn. Night gives way to day. I'm gathering my thoughts. Sunlight chasing shadows across the temple courts. Soon the crowds begin to show. Some stop and gather round with dreams, fears, with open ears and hungry to be taught. That's when you appear, dragging this woman you have found in a dreadful situation. It seems that she's been caught in some moral violation you were eager to address. I can see her desperation. She is here under duress. You think that I am buying time by scribbling in the dirt? Like I mentioned to Hosea, you people are the worst. When your sons join themselves to idols, when your daughters start to hook, I will not offer judgment, I will scarcely even look. Every one of you is rotten, from the top to the bottom. Every one of you is rotten, from the top to the bottom. This scenario and ask me where it's at. Then you try and quote the law to me. Well, good luck with that. Here's my counter proposition that will sort out right from wrong. Let the one among you with clean hands pick up the first stone. So now I watch you turn and go. Some slip out the back. Then I look up at the woman, ask her about the lack of her accusers. She mumbles, shrugs, wipes away her tears. So I say, well, me neither. But there's something you must hear. Go live a life that's different than the one that brought you here.
And that is going to wrap it up for our conversation with Steve Scott. Thank you so much for listening along with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. I mentioned in the intro the artist Josh Rude, and Josh stepped in to help Randy Layton of Alternative Records, who we were sad to lose earlier this year. And Josh has now begun working with Matthias, Randy's son, to help with re-releasing some of Steve's albums. Josh also stepped in and set up a Steve Scott fan group years ago. He didn't see anyone else stepping up to appreciate the creative and imaginative work that Steve does. And I thought I would throw in one more track from Josh, if nothing else, than to say thank you for your part in setting up a fan club and working so closely with Randy and Matthias Layton. Again, definitely go over to Josh's Bandcamp page. I will put it in the liner notes. And I will leave you with his track, Youthless.
Somebody's trying to take away all you. Somebody's driving an ironic car. They told us we were too young to play grown up till we grew up and said the same thing. To our little brothers who squealed to our mothers like little peasants on a wing. They told us we were too young to play grown up till we grew up and said the same thing. We were too young to play grown up till we grew up and said the same thing. Told us we were too young to play grown up till we grew up and said the same thing. Told us we were